Tonight, a new sign Canada's economy is starting to cool. Unemployment ticks up.
They're not looking for applicants. Seems like employers are getting a little bit pickier.
What this could mean for interest rates. Another tornado hits Ottawa, the third this summer.
This wasn't happening when I was a kid.
Why Ontario is becoming more of a danger zone. And the hottest ticket in Canada will cost you a lot.
Why are Taylor Swift tickets so expensive?
Should big artists do more to lower prices?
This is The National with Anita Bath.
Ian is away. We begin tonight with new evidence Canada's economy may be losing momentum as higher interest rates start to take hold. The unemployment rate is up unexpectedly to 5.5%. That's in part due to job losses, about 6,000 in the month of July. That as the number of unemployed people in this country has now risen nearly every month this year. Nisha Patel now on what the numbers mean and how it could affect interest rates.
Thousands of people lined up for hours at this Toronto job fair, many hopeful they'll find work after being turned down by other employers.
They said, okay, we'll let you know later, or they're not looking for applicants right now.
I got one interview, but then it got canceled.
There's like a lot of opportunity, but it seems like employers are getting a little bit pickier.
Not long ago, businesses were having a tough time finding workers to fill positions. Now it's a little easier.
We're looking to hire about 15 to 20 employees from everything from cooks, preppers, dishwashers, cashiers.
It's a signal the hot labor market is starting to cool. Canada unexpectedly lost about 6,000 jobs overall in July. The unemployment rate ticked up slightly to 5.5%. Still, workers are demanding higher compensation as average hourly wages rose 5% compared to the same time last year. Some sectors are showing more weakness than others. There were fewer Canadians working in construction, public administration, and transportation, while more were hired in healthcare and education. One factor is surging immigration, more than 1 million people last year alone.
We are having more people join the labor market. And so where does that show up? Well, it shows up in our unemployment rate.
This economist says the economy is also slowing down as higher interest rates take effect.
I think we are seeing demand ease a bit. And as a result, companies are going to be dealing with that slowing in demand for their goods and services.
The latest job numbers come as TELUS announced it's cutting 6,000 jobs globally, saying it needs to stay competitive in a slower economy. The telecom giant saw profits fall more than 60% in its latest quarter.
So, Nisha, the big question now, what does this all mean for interest rates moving forward?
Well, Anita, the labor market is clearly cooling and inflation is below 3%. So some economists say we've seen enough to avoid another interest rate hike. But it's not a consensus. The unemployment rate is still quite low, and the rise in wages will be a concern for policymakers. So other experts forecast the central bank could raise rates again. We will get one more inflation report later this month, and that could make all the difference ahead of the Bank of Canada's next big decision in September.
Thanks, Nisha.
You're welcome.
Signs the U.S. economy is also cooling, with job growth there slowing. In total, 187,000 positions were added in the month of July. That may seem positive, but it fell short of expectations. Still, the unemployment rate has fallen to 3.5%, which is in line with some of the lowest rates we've seen in more than 50 years. Well, some people in the Ottawa region are still dealing with the impact of last night's tornado. It's the third one to touch down in the area this summer, leading many to wonder if they're now living in a tornado danger zone. Rafi Boudjikanian has the expert response.
A sight that's getting to be all too common in the Ottawa area.
We grew up in Ottawa, and this wasn't happening when I was a kid. And
Steve Spratt grew up here. His home was spared damage Thursday night, but not these trees he remembers from childhood, nor his pool shed.
I feel for anybody else has more damage than we have. Luckily, nobody was hurt. That's the main thing.
Emergency officials indeed report no injuries from this latest tornado. People here are getting used to severe weather warnings after twin tornadoes touched down just a few weeks ago and a major thunderstorm bringing storm winds and large hail hit last week.
When you do have a severe thunderstorm warning, know what to do. You're not safe outside. You need to go indoors. If there's a tornado warning, the basement's the best spot.
Research into twisters has been ramping up in Canada. This team from Western University delving deep into damage assessment every time there's a touchdown. The specialists admit it can be difficult to see them coming.
For reference, you get a new radar scan every 6 minutes, and tornadoes can last as quickly as a minute. So if something happens in between those radar scans, it can be very hard to warn for those events.
But from drones to satellite footage, their tools point towards central Canada becoming more of a danger zone.
It's starting to put the pieces together, and we're just starting to see that this area is much more tornado prone than we thought.
Research suggests the dry air that's typical in Western Canada is moving east, and that, coupled with climate change, could be behind any increase in tornadoes here. Scientists need more data to be sure, something they may get with this apparent surge. Rafi Mujikani, CBC News, Ottawa.
Crews here in BC continue to battle the raging Adams Lake wildfire just north of Kamloops. More than 100 homes in the area are under evacuation. North of Whistler, the large Dowton fire has people out of their homes. At least 5 properties were destroyed there earlier this week. Of around 350 active wildfires in the province, 19 are a threat to public safety. And that hot, dry weather fueling those fires has forced several municipalities in BC to tighten their water restrictions. Lower than normal rainfall has led to a drought. As Renee Filipponi reports, it's a crisis that could stretch on for months.
So Program B right now is running.
Students working for the City of Vancouver check on sprinkler systems, making sure lawns won't be watered and that trees and shrubs only get water for short periods of time in the morning.
Outdoor water use is the biggest jump in water use in the dry season, and irrigation systems, often people set them and forget them.
The city is urging people to accept their brown lawns or risk a $500 fine.
We also have an enforcement program where we have 3 bylaw officers who are actively patrolling 7-day-a-week shifts.
23 of 34 water basins in BC are in a level 4 or 5 drought, and the situation is getting worse. The reservoirs that feed Metro Vancouver are in normal range right now, but water use has been up 20% this year because it's been so hot.
We're looking forward to make sure that we don't run into some kind of a hazard where we simply don't have enough water for the drinking, the cooking, and the cleaning.
Streams are dry, just like our forests.
This expert says it's possible more restrictions could be needed down the road if people don't conserve.
We really do need to slow the rate of depletion of the reservoirs, and the only way we can really do that is to do things individually, like perhaps shorter showers, don't flush the toilet as often.
This fair celebrates agriculture in BC, an industry suffering right now.
Climate change seems to be a very, very real thing.
This dairy farmer says irrigation is helping them have enough food for their herd right now, but she's worried about what's to come.
Feed shortage is going to become an issue, which of course drives our costs up, which in turn will drive the price of our milk products up.
And with no rain in the forecast, new restrictions will be in place for some time. Renee Filipponi, CBC News, Vancouver.
An extreme heat caused 9 Canadians to get sick at the World Scout Jamboree in South Korea. Temperatures have stayed in the mid-30s since Tuesday. Around 600 people have gotten sick in total this week. Scouts Canada says 5 of its adult volunteers and 4 youth experienced heat stress. Today, the UK Scout troop announced its early withdrawal from the Jamboree because of that hot weather. And Health Canada has approved the first RSV vaccine for adults over 60. It's a common virus, but it can develop into something much more serious. As Christine Birak shows us, doctors say this could be the vaccine they've long been calling for.
A vaccine 50 years in the making. Doctors say this shot will save lives.
It will be a game changer in significantly preventing severe illness and death, especially amongst older Canadians.
Approved in the U.S. in May, this is the first vaccine for RSV, or respiratory syncytial virus, for people over 60.
I think it's a big deal.
In a large trial published in the New England Journal of Medicine, one dose of the vaccine showed nearly 83% efficacy in preventing RSV lung infections compared to placebo, and 94% efficacy in protecting against severe RSV-related disease.
Every winter in hospitals across Canada, we're admitting individuals, usually seniors, with RSV infections that have severe infection in the lower respiratory tract.
Like the flu virus, RSV starts circulating in late fall. At its worst, it causes bronchiolitis, inflammation of the small airways in the lung, and pneumonia, making it difficult to breathe.
We know that older adults, as well as young children and infants in particular, are more likely to develop nasty complications.
There is no RSV vaccine for children. Earlier this year, Health Canada did approve an antibody injection that can be given to high-risk babies to help protect them from becoming seriously ill. At the same time, other RSV vaccines for seniors are still in the works.
I'm excited because this news means there's now an additional layer of protection for older adults against a common cause of infection in the lungs.
What's not yet clear is when they'll be able to get this new vaccine. Health Canada says the expert committee that comes up with recommendations is working on advice for RSV treatments for children first. Then it'll turn its attention to seniors. And ultimately, the provinces will decide when this new vaccine is made available. Christine Burak, CBC News, Toronto.
It's a medical first in the U.S. The FDA has approved the first ever pill for postpartum depression. The pill works faster than most other antidepressants. Clinical trial data shows it can ease symptoms in as little as 3 days. Postpartum depression can affect about 1 in 7 new mothers after they give birth. It will be sold as a once-daily pill to be taken for 2 weeks. In Russia, imprisoned opposition leader Alexei Navalny has been sentenced to another 19 years in prison today. This time, it's on charges of extremism. But as Sasha Petrusik tells us, many view the decision as a way for Vladimir Putin to silence one of his biggest threats.
The prison hall is drab, the verdict bleak. But Alexei Navalny, the tallest man on the video link, jokes with people around him. That charisma scares Russia's leadership, as does Navalny's ability to draw a crowd of supporters outside, even though they risk becoming police targets themselves. He's a model politician, says one supporter, so courageous. 19 years were added to his current sentence of 11 and a half. But on social media, Navalny said the number of years does not matter. I perfectly understand that, like many political prisoners, I am sitting on a life sentence, where life is measured by the term of my life or the term of life of this regime.
We have to put all our efforts in trying to get rid of Putin, and this will mean that Alexei will be free.
Russian President Vladimir Putin has long dismissed Navalny. He won't even say his rival's name.
Was it an attempt to put Navalny in his place?
Maybe, says Andrea Chandler from Carleton University, it's irrational spite at a documentary on Navalny that won an Oscar this year.
My husband is in prison just for defending democracy,
giving Navalny a Hollywood platform.
It seems that from what we know about Vladimir Putin, he's not above those kinds of petty personal motivations.
From Canada and other countries, the sentence brought condemnation. From the UN, a rebuke.
Raises renewed serious concerns about judicial harassment and instrumentalization of the court system for political purposes in Russia.
And there could be more. Navalny faces further charges of inciting terrorism, which could add another 35 years to his sentence. Sasha Petrusik, CBC News, Toronto.
An overnight attack by Ukraine has badly damaged a Russian warship. A so-called sea drone carried out the attack, striking near a Russian Navy base in the Black Sea. Russia's defense ministry has not confirmed any damage, but says it destroyed the drones involved. Ukraine has not officially taken responsibility for the attack, but confirms the Russian vessel was hit. And tensions are rising in Niger, with surrounding West African nations threatening military intervention in response to the recent coup. Thousands gathered in the capital city to pray for peace today. That after West African leaders said they're going to make an example out of the militants who have taken power. They did not say when they would act, but previously there was a Sunday deadline for a resolution. In Niger, a military rep said any aggression will be met with an immediate response by defense and security forces. Well, back in Canada, calls are growing tonight for more funding to house asylum seekers in Toronto. A lot of them are living in churches. And as Travis Denrad shows us, many are frustrated and struggling to keep up with demand.
Packing up, on the move again. Kevin Ephraim came to Canada in July from Nigeria. For him and hundreds of other refugees, this has been life ever since.
I slept in the streets like 3 good days.
Rain, blistering heat, cardboard to sleep on were reality at first. Then a local church stepped in. Nearly a month later, a city shelter bed has finally opened up.
Government has higher capacity than them, but in as much as it's a church, they are trying their best. They are trying, but government needs to assist them so that they will do better.
Our courtyard is full of people right now that want to come in.
All right, so this area is. Pastor Judith James says Toronto churches are scrambling to keep up with the demand for help. She wants city-run respite sites to be opened, something that has happened during extreme weather.
If churches can step up, mobilize ourselves to cater to, at one time, 230 people without notice, I am certain that the federal government, the city, and the province can do a lot more than what's been done.
Inside, rows upon rows of beds. Boys and girls clubs canceled, weddings postponed. In the kitchen, volunteers say they feel asylum seekers are not being treated fairly and point to race.
And when the crisis and war is going on in Ukraine, everybody went to the airport with flags. They went there open-handedly. They passed bills within a week in order to help the Ukrainians. Now, my folks have stood in front of the shelters for months, outside on the curbs. Where did they use the bathroom? Where did they get food to eat? Where did they get any form of assistance?
CBC News reached out to all 3 levels of government. Ottawa says it's already injected over $200 million to help, nearly half of that directly for Toronto. The city and province claim that is not enough. For advocates, it all amounts to political finger-pointing, while newcomers to Canada suffer. Travis Danraj, CBC News, Toronto.
Alberta has pulled the plug on plans to host the 2030 Commonwealth Games. The government says the price is just too high and the return isn't worth it. As Elise Von Schiel explains, Alberta is not alone.
Alberta is ready to host the world once again.
Just 5 months ago, Alberta was all in on hosting the 2030 Commonwealth Games. Now it says it's too expensive. The estimated price tag, nearly $2.7 billion. The Minister of Sport saying in a statement, "We committed to clearly demonstrating a return on our investment for the people and communities in Alberta." The latest blow to the Commonwealth Games, just last month, Australia withdrew from hosting in 2026 after the anticipated budget doubled.
Look, I've made a lot of difficult calls, a lot of very difficult decisions in this job. This is not one of them.
Canada was the only country exploring a bid for 2030. The city of Hamilton also considered it, then backed out. It's been a similar story with the Olympics. British Columbia refused to support a bid for 2030, and Calgary passed on 2026. This sports management expert says the bar for bids may need to be lowered.
The Commonwealth Games Federation is going to recognize that cities aren't willing to actually do the kinds of things that they were willing to do in the past in order to attract the games.
One of the biggest costs can be building facilities and other infrastructure. The International Olympic Committee has loosened its policies on new construction after controversy when venues in Rio de Janeiro and Sochi were abandoned. Organizers say Canada's ambivalence on hosting opportunities can create anxiety for athletes.
We need to look forward and we need to say, what do we have some priorities and how are we going to do that? And how are we going to keep our facilities that we currently have, continue to keep them at the world-class level.
Canada will be hosting the 2026 FIFA World Cup alongside Mexico and the United States, but it's unclear when or if it will host another international sporting competition after that. Elise Von Schiel, CBC News, Calgary.
The country music industry is facing increasing criticism when it comes to inclusivity and the representation of Black artists.
There's no way for us to see any safety within this industry.
What some say needs to change next. It's the moment Swifties in Canada have been waiting for.
This is not a drill. Taylor Swift Eras Tour is coming to Canada.
But will they be able to afford it? We'll look at what artists can do about those sky-high ticket prices. And later, not what this Nova Scotia fisherman was expecting to reel in. His big catch. We're back in 2. A devastating landslide has killed at least 11 people in the country of Georgia. Dozens are still missing. It happened northwest of the capital in a popular tourist area in the mountains. The landslide was triggered by heavy rainfall. And torrential rain has left at least 2 people dead in Slovenia. Helicopters have been getting people out who are trapped in their homes. Landslides have forced the closure of some roads, making it hard for rescuers to reach flooded areas. To New York City now, where an attempted PS5 giveaway has ended in absolute chaos. The event was organized by Casanat, a social media influencer with millions of followers. He promised to hand out consoles and gift cards, but thousands of people ended up swarming the area, some committing acts of violence and damaging property. Dozens of people ended up getting arrested, and Sanat could also face charges for inciting a riot. Right now, 2 of the top 3 songs on Billboard's Hot 100 are country hits that are generating controversy. At number 1 is Jason Aldean's Try That in a Small Town, accused by some as having an undercurrent of anti-Black racism. At number 3 is a white man's new version of a Black woman's biggest hit. Deanna Sumanak Johnson shows us why that's troubling for some.
Luke Holmes says he did a cover of Tracy Chapman's Fast Car because he was a fan of hers.
You get a fast car. I want a ticket to anywhere.
Still, many noted it took a white man to take the song to number 1 on country charts.
Any place is better.
For Chapman, a Black woman, it peaked at number 6 on the Billboard Hot 100, though it did win her a Grammy.
Try that in a small town.
And in the recently released video of Try That in a Small Town, Jason Aldean sings about guns and stands in front of a courthouse where a Black man was lynched in the 1920s.
You should try to be black like me.
In recent years, country music had seemed more open to Black artists, but some observers fear that acceptance is fading.
Every time that a major country star gets involved in some type of controversy surrounding any type of identity that is not a straight white male, their fans become emboldened and actually support them more when they see that they're disparaging other people.
This Canadian professor and country music fan authored several studies on representation on country radio.
After George Floyd's murder in 2020 during the pandemic, there was a big spotlight on these issues within the country music industry, but really everything was just status quo. Once those Black squares came off of social media, programming went right back to privileging predominantly white men.
When Jada Watson looked at artists played on country radio in 2022, 89.8% of them were white, with Black artists comprising just 2.7%.
Birds on a wire, I'll fly away.
Experts say if country truly wants to become more inclusive, all parts of the country music industry have to get on board.
We reached out to some prominent Black country artists to ask about their views, but none were available. As for Tracy Chapman, she has said she's happy her song hit number 1 on the country charts, even if it was someone else's version. Deanna Sumanak Johnson, CBC News, Toronto.
The countdown is on for Canadian Swifties. Tickets to Taylor Swift's Toronto tour dates go on sale next week, but for many, the cost may be prohibitive. We'll look at who's to blame for skyrocketing prices of concerts next. Plus, a Canadian musical icon and activist says she's stepping away from live performances.
Sometimes you got to take a stand just because you think you can.
The good news about the bad news is that more people know about it.
We'll revisit Adrian's interview with Buffy Sainte-Marie. The National takes you deeper into the stories shaping our world next.
She's doing 6 shows in Toronto. Oh my God.
Taylor Swift thrilled Canadian fans when she announced 6 dates at Toronto's Rogers Centre for the end of next year.
Taylor Swift is coming to Canada. This is how you're going to get tickets.
These sought-after tickets go on sale next Wednesday. Swifties are now desperate to get their hands on them. The Eras Tour, so popular across social media, is a spectacle. Set lists of 40 or more songs, dozens of costume changes, elaborate choreography, and effects. During the U.S. leg of the tour, ticket prices averaged $254, more than double those of her 2018 Reputation tour. Swift is pulling in an estimated $13.6 million U.S. nightly, putting this tour on track to be the highest grossing of all time, with more than $1 billion U.S. in ticket sales.
She's charging £661 to be on the side.
Swift has faced criticism. Her tickets are too expensive, and that's before fans are turning to the secondary market.
Why are Taylor Swift tickets so expensive?
She's allowed tickets to be sold using a dynamic pricing model, meaning the higher the demand, the higher the price, similar to the airline industry or Uber. She's now just the latest artist facing calls to do something about ticket prices. So how much power do artists have to keep ticket prices low? Do they owe it to their fans to try? Okay, to talk more about this, we're bringing in Karen Bliss. She's a music critic and the Canadian correspondent for Billboard. Karen, it's likely Taylor Swift's lowest price ticket could be somewhere around $150 Canadian, which you think is fair given the show that she puts on. But with dynamic pricing and the demand, that price is bound to be higher. How problematic do you think dynamic pricing is?
I don't think it should exist. I think a product should have a set amount and that should be it. And there should be no surprises when you're in the throes of excitement and trying desperately to nab those tickets before someone else does. Unfortunately, right now it's here to stay. It's been here for a while. It's, a Ticketmaster thing. And it's not going to be, it could double the price.
Doubling the price, though, is pretty high, and there are a lot of young girls desperate to go to one of these shows. It doesn't really seem reasonable that so many in her core fan base wouldn't actually be able to afford to go. What can Taylor Swift and other artists be doing to help bring down the high cost of tickets with this pricing?
Well, we've seen with Pearl Jam and most recently The Cure that it can be done. So, it's up to that artist, obviously, if they want to. Pearl Jam and The Cure made it so that you couldn't resell your tickets. And if you did want to, it was called fan-to-fan exchange, I believe. And it's, the base price, whatever you paid for it, that is what you can sell it for. In fact, The Cure was so outraged because some of their lower price tickets were $20. And the service charge, I think, was, $15 or $10, that kind of thing, that they went back to Ticketmaster and ended up negotiating for them to give a partial refund to people on the service charge. So it can be done.
Yeah, I think for the Seattle show, some of the worst seats in the house were going for, around $7,000 a pair on the resale market. Is this something then that you think that Taylor should crack down on?
I mean, as I said, the only way that she can crack down on it is, by not allowing the tickets to be resold to begin with, right? So, it's a free market. People can sell or try to sell tickets for whatever price they want, just like we even do that for any item we have on, a lawn sale or Kijiji. So whether a person pays that is another story. I think that's outrageous and ridiculous. And if a person isn't going to, it doesn't get tickets, then they should just wait. They shouldn't panic and pay an exorbitant price. They should wait until a couple of days before, because prices always drop. You know, she is playing 6, potentially 8 shows, about 50,000 people. But there's also people that might not be able to go in 2024, or they bought an amount and they want to sell them and they don't get them. Like, just wait until the stage is set up and look. There's always releases. There's things called holds that are put, you know, aside for people in the industry and for sponsors. They release those. You don't have to spend $9,000 or $8,000. Like, that's absurd.
Karen Bliss, thank you so much for your time. Some great tips for all those people bracing themselves for next week when tickets for Taylor Swift go on sale. Buffy Sainte-Marie says she's retiring from live musical performances after a career spanning more than 6 decades.
I'm like a kid when I'm doing whatever it is that I'm doing. I'm there because I want to be there.
Her music, her passion, and her unwavering activism. Adrian's interview with the legendary singer-songwriter is next.
He's all 31 and he's only 17. He's been a soldier for 1,000 years.
Legendary singer-songwriter Buffy Sainte-Marie is retiring from live performances because of health concerns. The 82-year-old has arthritis and a shoulder injury that make it hard for her to perform. For decades, Sainte-Marie used her voice as a musician, but also an activist, championing the rights of Indigenous peoples. Adrian sat down with her last year before the Pope's historic visit to Canada, where he apologized to residential school survivors. Here's that conversation.
So firstly, thank you. Thank you for being here. I'm curious how you are right now. Like, what is today like for you?
Oh, I'm so exhausted. I just spent 3 days in Denver airport sleeping on benches on the floor and everything.
How come?
Oh, airlines.
Yeah.
Yeah, everyone's overwhelmed. No, it was just awful.
Well, I look at that smile. I think about how wired, tired you must be, but I look at that smile. And that's the impression I've had of you, I think, my entire life is, you know, this big, broad smile. And so, like, what is behind that, or who's behind that right now for you?
What, my smile?
Yeah.
Gosh, I don't know. I'm kind of the same way as I was when I was a little kid. Very young, I learned that sometimes grown-ups are wrong and kids are right. For instance, I was told I couldn't be a musician because I couldn't read music. Therefore, you can't be a musician. You know, I wasn't allowed to be in band or chorus or anything. No. And I was told I couldn't be Indigenous because there aren't any more around here. And when somebody comes up to me and says something that to me is just kind of not right on.
Yeah.
I've always had a curiosity, and I make it fun to find out how it could be made better. And that does something for me, and I hope it comes through in songs and things. It's really not deliberate or anything, but I have a positive attitude.
I want to show you a clip, if I can. This is you. It's in the 60s, and it's an interview you gave to CBC.
Oh, wow.
If there's one single thing I'm trying to do for the Indians as a composer, it's to inform the white community and explain the way things really were, because I think that it's about time that we start to raise a generation of Canadian kids and American kids who realize that nations, like individuals, make mistakes, and that mistakes must be corrected if proper and straight growth is ever to be resumed. And so what I'm trying to do is to inform the people.
What does it feel like to watch her, to watch you like that?
My voice was higher. Let's see if I can talk like that now.
No, but how?
No, that's the way I have felt all along. But it's not just me.
I know.
We've all been feeling that way. But I have a platform, so I've been in a position to shoot my mouth off and say things. It's always a delicate call as to what you bring up in what setting.
Skywalker, he's a friend of mine.
You know, people think sometimes of Indian people, they tend to think in terms of braves and warriors and only young men.
Because what I'm talking about is the right of a person in his or her own country to exist.
Before Columbus ever got lost on our shores and we went down to rescue him, before any of that ever came about, you know, we were in very close contact with the great creator of all things.
Watching other interviews you have given over the years, as a journalist, I find it really uncomfortable because I can see you being open and being strong, and yet sometimes I see a bit of a dismissal or not really hearing you.
The little Indian girl must be mistaken.
Kind of.
Yeah.
And
she's nice and she's cute. We like her.
Right.
But she's really mistaken. It can't be true.
Dear God, tell me that doesn't still happen to you.
Of course, it happens all the time. It happens every day about a lot of things. Because, you know, there's so many gazillions of human beings, so many minds, so many experiences. And in being an educator, as opposed to a kind of activist, to do it through music and art, it does happen because the public doesn't know.
Now that the longhouses breed superstition, you force us to send our toddlers away to your schools where they're taught to despise their traditions. You forbid them their languages, then further say.
You know, I guess we're just a little past a year out from when Kamloops to Secwepemc First Nation talked about the rediscovery of these graves. And I'm wondering, do you remember what went through you? Because it's not news. I mean, you've been talking about this forever.
No, I was glad that the information was out. Here's my attitude. The good news about the bad news is that more people know about it.
Right.
See? So of course I was heartbroken like everybody else and horrified. But it's not as though I didn't know. We all know. Indigenous people, we know. We live next to those graveyards and those schools. Our people tell us what has gone on, and the only people who didn't know have been the perpetrators.
One of the things we're talking about is will or won't the Pope show up this summer, you know, to make the apologies. The uncertainty, of course, is because of his health, right? We just don't know.
And the airlines.
And well, there's that. But mostly we don't know how he is.
Yes.
And I'm thinking of all the work that you have done to get people, I mean, as you used to saying, you know, to finally open your big eyes. What do you think that apology will ultimately mean?
Well, the apology is just a beginning, of course. And I really like him. I mean, I think if we have a chance to make things better, he could very much be a part of it and be an inspiration to a lot of people. What's really key to the Pope and the slaughter of the indigenous millions over the last 500 years, what's behind it and made people like generations before the Pope think that that was okay is the doctrine of discovery. The doctrine of discovery essentially says it's okay if you're a European explorer, a white guy holding something that means Christianity, you can go anywhere in the world and you can either convert people and enslave them, or you got to kill them. I really would hope that he would help to rescind the doctrine of discovery, as just make it go away. You know, what I've been trying to do for years, I've been working with the Canadian Museum for Human Rights in Winnipeg. What ought to be there when you walk in there is the electric chair from St. Anne's Residential School. I mean, children were tortured with cattle prods and electric chairs, and I've been trying very hard for a long time because they want my guitar strap and they want handwritten lyrics to, you know, they want happy, showy things, you know. But I want them to put the damn electric chair right there and to actually show people the doggone doctrine of discovery, which is centuries old, and it doesn't affect you, but it's still affecting me.
Whether you're a woman or whether you're a man, sometimes you got to take a stand. Just because you think you can, you got to.
You had a chance to decide what you're most proud of?
Not just being here, just surviving. No, I don't think so. I'm always looking forward.
I know.
I am. I'm always looking forward. You know, when you're on a project and you're writing, I've been writing a lot of kids' books, or when you're writing songs or something, you're so into it. I really have so much fun. I'm like a kid when I'm doing whatever it is that I'm doing. I'm there because I want to be there, because basically for me it's play.
Listen, thank you very, very much, Kara.
Oh, thank you.
During his visit to Canada, Pope Francis apologized to survivors of residential schools. Since then, the Vatican has rejected the doctrine of discovery, which was used to justify colonialism. Still, 1 year later, some survivors have told CBC News that not enough action has followed the apology. Coming up, a quintessential piece of Canadian history is on the move. We'll take you to the new home of the Canadian Canoe Museum.
And it was like, holy cow, this thing is massive.
A Nova Scotia fisherman gets the surprise of his life in our moment. The Mega Millions jackpot in the U.S. is up to $1.25 billion. That's billion with a B. It's been months of draws with no lucky winners, maybe because the odds of winning are about 1 in 300 million. The prize money would be paid out over the next 30 years, minus federal and state taxes, of course. And the biggest museum collection of canoes in the world is portaging to a new location. The Canadian Canoe Museum is en route to a newly built waterfront home in Peterborough, Ontario. Mike Crawley gives us a sneak peek at what the new display will look like.
The Canadian Canoe Museum holds more than 600 canoes and kayaks.
There is no other collection like this in the world.
Yet the vast bulk of the collection is stored in this warehouse, out of public view for the past 25 years. The museum's home in this old factory, too cramped to display everything and nowhere near water.
We've been looking for a waterfront home for this collection and a place where the whole collection can be accessible and available to the visiting public.
That new waterfront home is now under construction and will look like this when it opens next spring.
The only time that you'll need to back away, we all will, is once it's lifting.
Some of the museum's largest canoes are already on the move to their new home.
Our next canoe to lift is a 26-foot birch bark canoe, a Wigwas Jiman made by Marcel Labelle. A lot of work. This is several years of preparation behind us to get the canoes and kayaks ready to be brought here. Every object has been very carefully inspected, photographed, cleaned.
Museum curator Jeremy Ward shows off some highlights.
So this is one of Adam Van Couverden's kayaks. This was from his 2004 world record event in Athens. There's Gordon Lightfoot's canary yellow canoe that he and Fred Gaskin wrapped on a rock on the South Nahanni back in 1980. Gordon Lightfoot also wrote a song called My Canary Yellow Canoe.
So to be able to offer them at the new museum where they can tell their stories and they can be visited by their donors or by elders or knowledge holders, it's a game changer for us.
When the new building opens, the museum will designate some of its collection for use on the water, so visitors won't just get to see birch bark canoes, they can find out what it actually feels like to paddle one. Mike Crawley, CBC News, Peterborough, Ontario.
Okay, so Rick Austin's passion is fishing, and he's caught some big fish in his lifetime, but nothing prepared him for what happened this weekend. He was out in his kayak fishing for striped bass off the coast of Nova Scotia when a great white shark took the line. His deadliest catch is our moment.
Oh, Jesus. I was out striper fishing. I wasn't fishing not even 5 minutes for mackerel. And my reel starts clicking. And in my mind, I'm thinking of that scene from Jaws. But I had no idea it was a shark, ever, while I was out there. I seen it going directly under the kayak. And it was like, holy cow, this thing is massive. Jesus Christ, what the is that? This is all going through my mind as I'm fighting it. And then it clears the water and scared the crap right out of me. Oh, Jesus. The shark was moving the kayak over to the right. It had no problem at all. And I was anchored. Holy lifting. Even if I wasn't anchored, it would have dragged me forever. My goodness, I would have been over in New Brunswick, maybe. I don't know. It was pretty scary. I cut the line. I did not want to harm this animal. This was by far probably the biggest adrenaline rush of my life. Absolutely.
Scary stuff. That adrenaline, his wife said, lasted hours after he got home. And Rick says the shark was overwhelmingly strong. Had he known it was a great white earlier on, he probably would have cut the line a lot sooner, he said. That's the National for August 4th. Have a good night.